Hi, I'm Samantha from Thread Collective. Welcome to part 5 of our Weave Along series. In today's episode, we're going to be slaying our reed and getting our warp under tension ready to start weaving. So you'll need a sley or reed hook, you'll want a measuring tape, and you will also want a 10 N per inch or 40 by 10 if you're using metric figures in your beater. So I've already put my beater back on the loom now that I've finished threading the heddles, but I would like to point out that I have not put the breast beam back on. All right, so I'll just get this camera repositioned and we'll get started on slaying the reed. So the first thing I want you to do is check that your reed is quite centered in your beater. So on some beater frames, you'll have a little bit of play at either end and you may need to shuffle your reed along. So I like to just check that it's in line relatively well with my shafts. I'm just going to just over just a small amount of mine, and that gets it lined up with my main weaving area. The next thing you're going to want to do is find the center point on your reed, and that's where your tape measure comes in handy. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm doing the bandana version of this pattern, which on the loom is about 25.3 inches. So the first thing I want to do is find the center. So my reed is 52 inches. So half of 52 is 26. So I find 26 and that's there. Now, I know that my bandana, I need the width in here to be 25.3. Half of that is a little over 12.5 inches. So find that there and line up there. So what I like to do then is just mark that with something. It can be a little piece of string, it can be your sley hook, just anything that's not going to easily fall out. It can even be the first of your threads. So I've got that marked, and now we can start slaying. So we take first bundle of threads, and we know that I need 10 ends per inch. So in a 10 dent reed, that just means 1 thread per slot. We go through. It's just, might have to change the camera angle so I can work a bit more comfortably. And get 1 through there, and now I've got that marked. I'm just going to quickly move the camera just so I can move a bit more freely. Okay, so just continuing on with my threading. Depending on your loom, you may be more comfortable sitting or standing. Your loom may also let you lock the beater into place as you thread. What I generally do after I've threaded a couple, in this one I'm going to do a full inch, is I tie off my my first 10 threads, and that helps block the beater from dropping forward on me. It holds it in a good position. Just making sure as you go that you're taking each thread in order, because if you cross your threads over at this point, it will have an impact on your weaving and your pattern. So really important that you take them in each order. Also really important that you don't accidentally double up in any of the dents, the little holes in your reed. And also important you don't skip any. And the reason for this is that it will show up in your cloth. You'll have a space, or it will have a little dent spot. Oops, that one's accidentally unthreaded. That one on me. Because this is such a short warp on this loom, I do have to make sure my tension's nice between the threads, or to kind of tug on each other a bit. the first section done. This section has slightly more threads in it than the 10, purely because I had more left over. Just making sure all my ends are sitting equally. Especially being a short warp, I want to make sure I am maximising every little bit of my threads. So I've threaded my first section on, one thread per dent, and I've just tied that first section in a little knot, again, one that I can easily undo for the next phase. But that's now holding the beader in a position that I feel comfortable with. So we're going to proceed. And we're just doing one thread per inch. Very important, we don't cross any threads. We don't double up our threads in a dent, and we don't skip any, all of which would have an impact on the fabric. So we've got a 10 ends per inch pattern, and we are slaying our reed 10 ends per inch. You could say you don't have a 10 end per inch reed. If you have an 8 dent reed, you can slay an 8 dent reed to still get 10 dents per inch, and because that's a regular pattern, that can look quite nice. If you have a 12 dent reed, I think the closest you could get is a 9 end per inch sort of equivalent. So if you don't mind it looking a little bit looser again, you can absolutely also use your 12. 10 or 40 by 10 is just one of those reeds that's a really good all-rounder to have though. So if you don't already have one, I'd consider adding one to your toolkit. Alright, so just continuing. So I'm up to the last couple of inches for slaying. So I've just repositioned the camera again and popped it back into normal speed so you can see what I'm doing. So one thing to note is that you'll see that I'm pushing the threads on my right further over. It just makes it easier for me to grab each thread. I can clearly see which thread's coming next to minimize tangles as I go. So yeah, let's do this. So again, just a single thread per slot for this particular pattern. You do not need a reed for every single variation of ends per inch you'll do. So if you're doing, say, a 20 ends per inch project, all you need to do is put 2 ends per slot in your reed. The main thing to remember is just, as I said earlier, avoid crossing your threads. Do your best to not skip any dents, these holes, or double up in them. If you do, it would be wise to go back and fix that at this point rather than after the weaving has already started. Sometimes you can kind of get away with it after the weaving started. It can look a little bit like a design feature, and that's, you know, that's weaver discretion. If you don't mind, you do you. I will point out that using dark threads, it does make it more difficult if you're new in your weaving journey to see if you've skipped any or doubled up. And it's the same with knitting or any craft really. If you are new to it, ideally choose a lighter colour because it just makes it so much easier to see. So once we get through this part, the next bit is choosing how you want to tie your warp on, whether you're lashing straight on to the rod or whether you would prefer to do, you can kind of lace it up with some thread and tension it that way as well. I usually just directly tie mine on instead of lashing, but we'll have a quick look at both options. With shorter warps, it can be better to do that. I'm not sure 100% what it's called, where they tie it on with a bit of string instead of onto the sticks. Clear as mud, I'm sure. It'll make more sense when you can see what I'm talking about. Also notice every time I thread one of these, I'm pushing the heddle over relatively in line with it so that I don't have too much wonkiness going on the path of the threads. And it will settle further as I apply tension in the next stage. And last thread. Okay, so next I need to put my breast beam back on. There we are, breast beam is back on. Okay, so we finished threading, we finished slaying. We need to get these under tension now. So I'll just restart the... Okay, I've got my cloth beam back on. Just rearrange this slightly if I can. And I am about to install my rod back on here. So just my Texsolve. Tie-up rod. Pushing it through there so I can get these Texsolves on, and then I'll line them up with the lines that Louette kindly mark in advance. I like to make sure when I'm doing this that I haven't accidentally wrapped my Texsolve or string around that cloth beam, because that will obviously affect your tension. Right, sliding each up where it needs to be. And applying some tension to get that nice and even. Okay. So the next step is to get your warp under tension. So make sure you've got your tie-up rod installed. Make sure it's coming over your cloth beam so you don't have to deal with issues with that later. So if you've taken your cloth beam off, make sure it's back on. Mine's back on, so we're good to go. So one of the ways you can tension your warp is by directly tying onto this rod. And that's the way I normally do it. So all you do is take one of your sections, make sure you've got some nice tension across all the threads, split it in approximately half, like so. You're gonna wrap from over the top of the stick underneath. You're gonna take each half of that batter threads, so I'm going to do, I think I've got a surgeon's knot. So I've got the simple, you go through once and then twice and tie. Makes it really easy to tension. You go through and you do that on the opposite side. Just move these heddles over a bit, they're not quite lined up. So, making sure you've got nice even tension. You do, just smooth it with your hands like that. Dividing approximately in half, over, split, do that. Not, surgeon's not 1, 2, and come back and we go all the way across. Really important you do this in one sitting because you'll end up with wonky tension. So after you've gone through and you've tied all of them on, you go back to one side and you give it a tug tight, like this, and you tie another knot to secure it. And you do that all the way along, again, in one go, making sure you're not stopping because it just ensures you get the most even tension in that session. If you're coming and going, you tend to end up with sort of wonky threads. But because I'm working with such a short warp, I'm going to do things a little bit differently, and I'm going to lash on with some string today. So get this one undone. I still need to make sure I get these nice and even. So I'm going through, making sure these are nice and even, and I'm just tying my knot. I'm doing that for every bout. So I'm applying tension, also just making sure I'm relatively in line with my heddles, which will then make sure I'm relatively in line with my back beam. And we have a fringe on either the bandana or scarf, so it's not waste. Any of these little bits at the end, you can use them in your fringe. And that's also why I'm not doing a more secure knot at the moment. I'm just doing one that I can easily undo still. Excuse me. On some looms, especially ones that are more well worn, the textile or metal heddles do fall into place much easier just by giving a tug. But if you've got a newer loom or you've got some new textile, well, they're just a bit snug, you'll just have to help them out a little bit. And just by taking the time to make sure we're all even, we're minimising tension issues. And half the battle with getting some beautiful woven cloth is just making sure we've got good tension. Weaving can be very unforgiving for threading errors and tension issues. So a good weaving experience really does start with the setup of your loom. And it is the weaving. So if you can learn to love this if you don't already, or the setup, I'd suggest getting there because you'll spend just as much time doing this as throwing the shuttle. Now, wool is quite forgiving compared to a lot of the other materials we could be using. Linen tends to be perhaps one of the more difficult for some weavers to wrap their heads around. It is not forgiving in terms of tension issues, that's for sure. So I really like wool as a good beginner-friendly option. It can be more fragile and it can be a bit more prone to abrasion and sticking, but especially with these heavier weights such as the Harrisville, Shetland, it's just a relatively easy wool to use. One of the key things to remember as we tension our wool is that we do not want to over tighten it. It's kind of a bit of a sweet spot that you'll figure out as you're weaving. Too loose and you'll end up with your shuttle going for a dive potentially, and not tight enough and you may end up with too much abrasion or some snap threads. Okay. Okay, so I'm happy with my tension across here now. I am taking a length of string, usually about 4 times the width of warp is good enough, but err on the side of caution if you like. Better to have too much than not enough. So just securing the first side on with a knot, and I'm going to just quickly wind this into a little ball of yarn to make threading through a bit easier. So do my first bit, find approximately halfway, go through. Wrap around my stick and just repeat. I'll apply tension when I've gone through to the end. I'll wind up my little ball again. You go, be conscious with your texel or tying cords that you have your warp evenly spaced, relatively evenly spaced either side of that. Otherwise, when it comes to applying tension and weaving, it's just going to make things a bit skewed. Oh, I might have steered you wrong. You might want to go 5 times the width. I'm running out of length. I can sneak some length from here. be a little bit lazy, and instead of undoing and going back through, I'm just going to do a very secure knot and continue on. If you don't have as much confidence in your knots as I have in mine, I would recommend unthreading and starting again if you haven't got enough there. The only other downside to having the knot is it causes a little bump of friction, which can obviously lead to problems when we go to tension this warp. So I just need to be mindful of that as I adjust. Should I point out as well, before I do my final tension, I removed the least sticks. They're still there at the moment. But I want to make sure everything is secure before I do my final tension. So I just wanted to point out, I've actually paused for the minute. I need to find a tool. Some of you remember me saying I haven't used this loom before. And when we assembled it, we've just made one of the bolts a bit too tight, so I can't actually put my tension on properly at the moment. So I will fix that up and then we'll go through this. Okay, loom repair done. That bolt's been loosened a little bit for me, and I can now apply some tension. So, should be able to see some of this is quite loose, some of this is tight. So I can just sort of strum away at this until it all evens out essentially. And the other thing that a lot of weavers like to do, I tend to start weaving straight away, but a lot of weavers let their warps rest overnight, and that will also play a big part in evening out your tension. This is actually starting to look really good already. So I do this, and this helps me pick up if there's any loose threads too. Now what I'll do, because I'm close to where I want it to be, is take out the least sticks at the back, and I will adjust further once they're out of the way. Really quite happy with how that's looking so far. So just add a little more tension. Like I said before, we don't want too much because it's wool and wool is stretchy. So it's a little bit tighter on this side. So just do some very small adjustments across. And it's all just a game of feel at this point. Got one loose thread in this spout here, so I'm going to just play a very risky game. So risky because you could accidentally end up having to completely relash on if you're not careful doing this. So some people, I guess, would rather just leave it and weight that thread separately. So you can buy warp weights. I believe it's Ashford that have them on our website if you'd like to get some. And I'm not adverse to doing that, but if I'm still in the pre-weaving stage, I would prefer to just sort it out now. What I'm doing at the back is just strumming like the guitar strings, and it gives me a really good idea about tension. So I'm going to try and get a bit more slack over into this side. So just take a very small amount across. I am going to let this one rest overnight because with this way of tying on, I should see some shifting and evening out just a little bit more on the tension. So whether I give it a few hours or overnight, it should be enough to just well and truly even out any discrepancies at all. And just while I'm here as well, having a good look to see if I can spot any skipped dents or anything doubled up to avoid having to go back later, but that's all looking good. All right, I will see you guys in the next installment.